Hello, journal besties. I cannot believe I'm saying this, but it is time to do the final update in my 2025 reading journal. That means today we are going over November and December reads, filling in all of those final challenges, seeing how well I did overall, and making the final spreads for the books I read in 2025. So the first and very exciting thing to update is my 2025 reading goals. Starting with knocking 100 books off of my TBR. I was able to accomplish that, and I'm so grateful to myself and my shelves that I did. I did not physically read 25 books, but I put in a really great effort. I was able to finish 5 series. I bound a book, and I actually bound several books this year. I did not plan a book getaway. This is something that we kept trying to plan and make happen as a group, and it just didn't align with everybody having babies and getting married and things like that this year. So definitely something that I'm looking forward to in 2026. I did get to collaborate with more creators, and I hope to do more of that in the new year. And then finally, host a readathon. This is something that I did at the very last month of the year, and I hosted the Sales and Tales readathon. If you missed it, it's one of those things that you can participate in anytime, so feel free to go back and jump in if you'd like. Also, I apologize for the glares that you're going to see on some of these papers. I use a really nice photo paper, so sometimes my lamp catches on certain images. So we're just going to go with it. We're fighting for daylight nowadays, and this video is never going to get done if I'm waiting for sunshine. So moving along. Here we've got the captain's log where I've marked down every single book that I read throughout the year, the title, the author, format, and whether it was from a TBR or something new or borrowed. And overall, I made it to 123 books. Wild. In November, I read 4 books from my TBR, and those were Now in November, Joe and Laurie, Return of the King, and Heart-Led Leader. And then in December, I was really focused on finishing up some arcs that I didn't really read anything from this list. So we have nothing to mark off for December, but I think overall, I am very proud of the progress I made on my physical TBR this year. I would say this is probably about 50% of either me reading the books or unhauling them. All of the gray books are books that I've since let go of. I've tried reading them, decided they're not for me, and they go in the pango pile. But I am very excited to transfer what's left over to my New Year's Hobbit library. I'm looking very forward to that. I haven't read any more books on this list, so we don't need to check anything off. But for Walk the Plank, I have a couple to add, unfortunately. Starting with some more bingo tries, I have The Overstory by Richard Powers. This book has some amazing reviews, but they're just, I tried and I couldn't get on board with the audiobook narrator there. And then Sing Unburied Sing is another one that I just didn't connect with it so much. I got about 30% through, wasn't enjoying it, wasn't happy with where the story was heading, so I just was like, I'm going to stop there. One book that I did finish, however, was The Mad Wife. This was an advanced reader's copy that my book club and I actually read together as well. And this was pitched as a thriller, and it was much more horror-centered, I would say. And it just made me feel really uneasy, so wasn't a fan of that one. But I've got to say, having only 4 major books that made it in my Walk the Plank pile, and a couple of these were just like not for me, a DNF'd, I think that's a pretty good year. All right, now let's fill in some stats for November and December. I read 3 nonfiction books at the end of the year. We have Heart-Led Leader by Tommy Spalding, My Body Is Not a Prayer Request by Amy Kenny, and That's a Great Question I'd Love to Tell You by Elise Myers. I really like how this page turned out overall, and I ended up reading more nonfiction than I anticipated. I have to add a couple more arcs to my arc page here, starting in November with The Mad Wife by Megan Church and The House Sapphire by Marissa Meyer. Then in December, I read The Merge by Grace Walker and My Husband's Wife by Alice Feeney. In November, I read House Sapphire, and in December, I read Elise Meyer's That's a Great Question, I'd Love to Tell You. We also learned that the new Alex Stern book number 3 is coming out next year. We have an official date now, which is so exciting. So I'm going to move this to my next list. All right, so the final book I read this year with my eyeballs is Queen of Shadows by the Queen herself, Sarah J. Maas. And we just need to draw in this spine. So another super easy one, a bright red center, some pretty easy text, and then some shadow along the border. So I'm going to start with my trusty Crayola Super Tip. And then I'm going to use this tan mild liner to start shading in the sides. And then the very edges, I'm going to use this kind of sage green color to neutralize the red and edge it out with a little bit of brown. And now we have a little gradient. And I'm just going to wait for that to dry, and then I'll go in with some text. So while I didn't physically read 25 books this year, I still love how this page turned out. I feel like it's so colorful and reminiscent of the books that I spent extra time with this year, and so many of these are new favorites. So in November, I finished the Lord of the Rings series by reading Return of the King. And in December, I continued the Throne of Glass series by reading Queen of Shadows. So this year I finished 16 series, and I also knocked off a couple that I'm just no longer interested in continuing. For my buddy reads this year, I have an addition. Since this year I am reading the Throne of Glass series with my besties, I had to add them into my journal. So first we have this cutie Ashley and my friend Caitlin. And then of course the books that we read. Now they both finished the entire series, and I am still behind. I have 3 more books to go, but I'm really enjoying the series, and I think I'm just a slower reader, so it's taking me a while since I'm reading these physically. And then on my BookTube favorites page, I thought it'd be fun to put in some of my YouTube statistics. So this first bar graph is my 5 most popular videos of the year, and those were my 2026 reading journal, my 2025 reading journal, my mid-year reading journal flip, breaking in my 2025 reading journal, and my most recent monthly journal video, which was October. Overall, you guys watched 22.8 thousand hours of my channel this year, which is wild to me. You gave me over 128.6 thousand views, and 2.4 thousand of you joined this little community here. So thank you so much for making this such an amazing year. I wanted to make this page a little bit more magical and sparkly. So I got this really cute little sparkle stamp on Etsy, and I just feel like it's the perfect embellishment for spreads like these, because you can just kind of fill in some of that white area with some stars. Now we have my final book club pages of the year. In my book besties, our December book was The Briar Club by Kate Quinn. And for our Christmas party this year, we did one of those board parties where everyone kind of brings a charcuterie board of a different theme. So I did a Mexican food theme and I made these like quesadillas and salsa, and I did like red and green peppers for Christmas. But one of my friends did a caramel apple board, another did like cheese and crackers and charcuterie. Someone else did like a sourdough board. It was so much fun. We had so much food and everybody got to like really bring their own skill set. So it was just a fun way to celebrate the end of the year. So here's all of us with all the different books we read this year, and I just love these girls so, so, so much, which is why they're my besties. And then in Book Babes, we read The Mad Wife by Megan Church, and in December, The Other Side of Now by Paige Harbison. This club, we like to do lots of things. So we do books and then also kind of plan activities every month. So I have a lot more pictures with this group of gals just because we do many more things. One of our book clubs, we went out on the lake and took the boat out. We did summer bucket list making party. We did a painting party where we each bought a landscape painting from like a thrift store and then painted it to be like Halloween themed. We do all kinds of fun stuff. There we go. It's so fun to fill it in with all of these memories at the end of the year. Okay, challenge time. We're here at a year in readathons. I did not do any readathons in November, but I did 2 in December. So we have my own readathon, Sales and Tales, and then we have Lightfall, which is part of the Magical Readathon. So I just printed out a little picture of Dovanthia's special as the little icon for the readathon. And I just love this page. I think it's so fun to look back and see all the little things I participated in, and each of these icons just reminds me of those communities that I was a part of during that month. For destinations, I still want to rework this page somehow, but I haven't gotten there yet. For now, I'm just adding in more post-its. We've got November and December for the places that I traveled. Bringing us to the Kraken Challenge. In November, I fed my Kraken 3 books and I read 4 from my shelves. In December, I bought 1 book and read 2 from my shelves. So I have all of this in total, which I'll share with you in the wrap up here pretty soon. For my loyalty cards, I filled up 1 whole card, which earned me a new book. And for that, I redeemed it for That's a Great Question I'd Love to Tell You by Elise Myers. And then I started another loyalty card, but didn't complete it. So that earned me only the 1 book. And then because I finished the Lord of the Rings trilogy, I earned myself another book. And for that, I thrifted The Bear and the Nightingale, which I still have to read. Overall, I think that this challenge was super successful in helping me really focus on my physical TBR that I have here at home and bringing home less books to add onto my shelves. I felt like I was shopping with the knowledge that I had earned certain books as opposed to just free buying whatever I wanted. So if you're doing some type of TBR challenge this year, let me know in the comments. Bringing us to the moment of truth, which is book bingo. The way I've been playing is that as I read the books on this list, if I read them, I get to peel back the washi tape. That'll reveal a coordinate and it lands on the bingo board. I cannot switch these books. If I don't like them, I'm just DNFing and getting rid of them. And if I don't read them, I'm supposed to unhaul them at the end of the year. So let's see if we can finally get a bingo. I did read 1 book on this bingo list, and that is Heart Led Leader. I feel like there's multiple ways that this could happen. It could be here, it could be here, it could be here. So I have 3 chances at winning this game. So let's see how we did. B3. You guys, we did it. You guys, I got a bingo. I thought it would happen much sooner, but I'm glad that it did eventually. In the corner here, I have a couple more books that I didn't attempt this year, one of which is Anne of Green Gables. This is something that's still on my list and definitely what I'm going to be carrying into the next year. Then we have A Voice in the Wind. So this book I actually started reading in December, which is why I'm not going to unhaul it, because I actually completed basically this whole series in January. So we know that's already safe. This one is very similar. It's just an older book and I have to read it with my eyeballs, and I just ran out of time this year. Same thing with this book here. It's not available in audiobook in America. So those are on my to be read list. I am not unhauling them just yet, but I did go through the rest of these books and unhauled ones that I wasn't interested in. So those were The Overstory, Sing Unburied Sing, and that's it. The rest of them I'm still going to try. We can mark off Heart-Led Leader because we finished that. And overall, I feel like that was a pretty fun year of bingo. Okay, let's complete this page here. In November for J, I read Jo and Laurie, which is a spin-off of The Little Women. Then, because I needed a book that started with U, I went with Uprooted by Naomi Novik. And then I finally ended out the year with Queen of Shadows by Sarah J. Maas. Which means I did every single letter of this alphabet challenge, which was a lot of fun, and I'm glad I'm finished with it because I'm going to give myself maybe a couple years break before I try doing this again. For Treasure Trove, I just listed the days that I finished off the different books during the month. I like how this page turned out. I think it's interesting information, but this is one of those pages that I'm not going to be carrying over into my new journal for next year. Bringing us to Adventures in Aldea and our final 2 placements on the board. In November, we were at 11A and December 12A. So my route kind of went up, to the left, up again, down a bit, and then back up. But I stayed all in this kind of northwest region known as Eartheria. My prompt for November was to read a nonfiction book. So for that, I read The Heart-Led Leader. And in December, the prompt was Ancient Tree Blessings, read a book with a tree on the cover. So for that, I read Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. And then our final challenge is in my other journal. This is the continuation journal that I used for the second half of the year. We have my dashboard and then my final 2 challenges, which were reading books that had numbers in the title and then reading books that had colors in the title. And I watched my video back and I was laughing at myself because I was asking you guys if you had any ideas for any book that had the color purple in it. And all of you correctly said, how about you read the book called The Color Purple? So I did. I read The Color Purple by Alice Walker, and holy cow, that was such a good book. Ta-da! Completed another challenge. I did not complete this challenge. I probably could have if I really focused on it, but considering I started these in July, I think I did pretty good for my attempt at finishing at least one of the two. So let's update my dashboard. At the top of this page, we've got my sinking ship. That is kind of my breakdown of my Kraken tracker. Every time I add a book to my physical TBR, I'm adding a book to the overall goal that I wanted to read within the year. So 111 plus 4 new books turned my goal into 115, of which my final total was 125. And that is broken down into books that I read versus books that I unhauled from my physical TBR. Overall, I read 77 books and I unhauled 48 books. 8 more of those books were read in November, and then the final stretch in December. So I finished more than my 100 books sunk. I read 1 more book with my eyeballs, so I was only down by 5 books. In November, I planned my first readathon, but I hosted it in December. But you could really do it anytime. So if you missed the readathon, you're welcome to jump into it whenever you feel like doing a little reading challenge. I did not do a book getaway, but I did finally win my bingo in December. So we're going to mark that big box off. I read for J and U in November and Q in December. So that one's complete. And then we read The Color Purple also in December. So that one's marked off as well. That's a pretty good score at the end of the year, if I do say so myself. Pretty proud that I accomplished all of that. I did not finish my lore challenge, even though I was very excited for that. I started to read a little novella called Tides and Drift by Adrienne Young, but I didn't finish that just yet. So next time I read a pirate-themed book, maybe it'll sneak its way into this journal. I have not read any of the books that I purchased on this list, but it is setting up for an exciting year next year. And finally, we've got my TBR loyalty card. These are just books that I award myself based on the challenges that I win at the end of the year. So we finished bingo. I finished my Sails the Seven Seas, my ABC challenge, my year at Aldia, the Aurelium Academy, my Kraken challenge, and the only one I didn't complete is my eyeball reads. But overall, I think it was a very successful year of reading, and I'm very pleased with how this journal and everything turned out. But that's enough of the updates. Let's get into actually making some reading journal spreads and talk about the final 18 books that I read in November and December. So getting into my November and December setups, I am heavily relying on the use of layering paper and sticker sheets. I pulled out kind of all of my sticker collection and tried to pair those with my different sheets of origami paper and just some torn book pages to really layer in and pull some colors from different book covers to make the spreads feel very cohesive overall. So right now I've just stamped some letters onto some blue origami paper, and I've chosen a patterned origami paper to use as the background for my cover page for the month. This one is very textured, so putting some glue on the page is more helpful than trying to roll it on the paper itself. I'm also layering with just some book pages to give it a little bit more visual texture, but lighten up some of the overwhelming blue that is on this page. I really love a navy in a November month. I just feel like, at least here in California, the weather's starting to get a little chillier at night. It's definitely still very hot during the day, but it just puts me in the mood for winter, even though it doesn't quite feel like it yet. So this gal in a heavy coat is not reminiscent of what I'm going through, but it is definitely what I wish I were going through in November. So the sticker sheet again is doing the heavy lifting here. I'm just pairing these stickers and placing them around my layered paper so that they create a wintry collage. It just is a very cozy way to start the journal. I really like how Mochi Bujo's sticker sheets have use every little bit of space to give you the most out of the sticker sheet, including these tiny little dots and leaves, which I think are great for just filling in the littlest bits of space on your page. I am pairing my cover page with the first book I read in November, which is The House Sapphire by Marissa Meyer. I have these cute little characters from IEEBEE. They're just some PET tape stickers to represent the Fontaine sisters. Our main character is Mallory Fontaine, and she and her sister kind of make a living for themselves by selling ghost tours and fake artifacts around a ancient serial killer known as Monsieur Lebleu, who killed his 3 wives. One day, their hoax is discovered, and the real heir of the House Sapphire threatens to expose their schemes unless they help him with a ghost hunt. So the sisters fake their way through this mystery until accidentally stumbling upon answers to lead them to the truth. This book was super cute and contained humor and romance and some mystery. And Marissa Meyer has just become one of my go-to authors when I feel like I need a palate cleanser, which I really did after reading so many heavy books and big books in October. So this was the perfect way for me to start the month off, and I highly recommend it for anyone in need or looking for a little cute mystery. Overall, these 2 pages were pretty quick to put together, and I love how just the overall color scheme corresponds with the book cover and really makes it feel uniform and cohesive. My final touch is using this little sparkle stamp to add some flair. Another book I really loved and that surprised me in November was Jo and Laurie. This is a spin-off of Little Women from the perspective of what if Jo and Laurie ended up together. So to inspire this spread, I pulled photos from all the Little Women adaptations throughout the years. This one's my personal favorite. And it just makes me smile every time I look at this page. This is one of my most cherished stories, and I love that I got a chance to spend a little more time in that world. So I'm going to put these photos together in a collage, and right now I'm just making a base or a backdrop for those photos to kind of overhang so there's not any leftover white page behind the pictures. I thought this script washi tape would be perfect for that because it has a vintage vibe, and as we know, Jo is a writer. So I imagine her room having many, many surfaces of scribbles layered on top of them. So, as I said, this story follows closely the story of Little Women, and it's written by 2 authors, Margaret Stoll and Melissa de la Cruz. And I felt like they did a really good job at honoring the personalities and passions of the characters and really kept them true to the original. This story is the perspective of Jo has just finished her novel, for which we know as the original Little Women, but she still has some growing up to do and some life discovery to do. So part of that is her having to find resolution with the relationship with Laurie and eventually admit that maybe she does have feelings for him in more than a friend sense. And falling in love does not negate your freedom as a woman, and you can still have all of the opportunities that you can have as a single gal when you're in a healthy relationship. So it was a really sweet story And it surprised me because I feel like I'm such a purist and I wasn't sure if I was going to like how this one went because, I love the original so much. But I did really enjoy it. So if you are a huge fan of Little Women, I encourage you to give this one a shot because, again, I think the authors did a really good job at honoring the original tone and language of the book. I felt like Jo was written beautifully and very reminiscent to the original works. To finish off the left side of the spread, where I'll put the book cover, I'm using some really pretty mint washi tape from the Washi station and also more of that scripted washi tape, which I think I got on Amazon like so long ago. It's one of my older tapes. But I chose these two because I wanted to pull in some of those colors of the book cover. This little dainty lacy washi tape is from Daiso, which I like as a very minor embellishment because it is kind of transparent. So um, it's hard to show up. You gotta kind of put it on a darker surface. But after those layers, I added the book cover and then I also wanted to pull in some character art. So I have the sticker sheet from AM Paper Company. I got this sticker sheet when I was at Pen Paper Palooza in May, and I just really think it embodies the character of Jo. From the attire to the short hair to holding a journal, I just think the sticker is perfect. And the final stickers I'm placing are leftovers from a Mochi Bujo sticker sheet to which I already used the character, and I'm using the leftovers. My next three books are in the historical fiction genre, starting with Now in November by Josephine W. Johnson. I found an Etsy shop that had these beautiful, kind of vintagey wallpaper inspired washi tape, and I thought that would be perfect for this spread. Now in November is a short book, but it is full of just amazing history. It follows a family during the Dust Bowl era in America and is told by the middle sister. There's three sisters, and the story is told by Margaret. And it's unique because Margaret is really introspective, and what she's observing are, the harshest conditions of history. You've got a very severe famine in the land. The land itself is just not workable. People are starving and broke, and her family takes on the responsibility of a rented farm to which the government is seizing any growth they have. So, in the most dire of situations, Margaret is still somehow able to see the beauty in things that are going on around her and notices her sister growing up and her younger sister learning new things and the quiet moments with her dad. And the book is just really introspective and beautiful. I feel like this whole book is just poetry and just delightful, at the same time being very tragic and heartbreaking. But it's no wonder that Josephine Johnson won a Pulitzer Prize in 1934 when she was just 24 years old for this book. On the right, I'm just layering some more washi tape to showcase two more historical fiction reads. We have The Mad Wife by Megan Church. I was actually really excited about this book because it was pitched as a domestic thriller about motherhood. Um, it was kind of like a psychotic vibe, but it was much closer to horror. It just felt like you were getting just as paranoid as the main character, and it gave me such an ick. I don't recommend this one at all. No one in my book club liked it. So it's rare that I come on here and tell you not to read something, but I don't think you should read this. Come Fly With Me was cute. It's about two friends who become Pan Am flight attendants and just kind of how they overcome different struggles and, become women. They're very young when they take on this new role as a flight attendant, and it just follows their friendship over a couple years. And how their friendship makes an impact on their life overall going into adulthood and their senior years. For my next spread, I want to give these pages a little bit of an aged look. So for that, I'm going to use a distressed ink kit, which is essentially just a ink pad and a stamp or a little sponge, and you just rub it around the edges of the page to give it an aged look. I'm splitting the page on the left in half because I have a lot more to say about one book than I do about two other books. So this section on the far left is going to be a space for two book reviews, which are Uprooted by Naomi Novak and Heart-Led Leader by Tommy Spalding. Heart-Led Leader is a nonfiction book about leading with a servant's heart and showing up to any leadership position with the people you're working with and serving at the forefront of your mind. It was great. It just didn't really have any revolutionary information for me. And Uprooted also had potential to be great. I really loved the beginning of it, but then I got kind of bored. It honestly felt like I was watching my husband play a video game where I'm just watching him cast a spell after spell after spell. Return of the King, however, was awesome. This is the third book in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and wow, what a time. What a good time. You guys already know that I'm obsessed. This series inspired my whole 2026 reading journal for this upcoming year. And it was my first time actually reading the book series. I've been a huge fan of the movie franchise for years, but it was great to spend a lot of time in these books. I decided to listen to the audiobook narrated by Andy Serkis, and I think he just does a fantastic job. He can do the voice of every single character so well. Um, Obviously, Smeagol's perfect, but he can do every character's voice, and it's almost like it feels like they had a full cast, but it's just all him. Anywho, in this final chapter of this amazing trilogy, we are kind of split up. The fellowship is in all different areas, but we're nearing the end of our journey. Frodo and Sam are about to deliver the ring to Mordor, and then you've got Aragorn and Gandalf and the hobbits, and they're trying to get to the action before Mordor's army kind of takes over. So Aragorn comes in with like an army of the dead. Frodo and Sam get the ring destroyed, and the prophecy is fulfilled, and Aragorn takes his place as the king of Gondor. It is a huge celebration, and it's what a way to end the book. For this spread, I am using some pages torn out of a Lord of the Rings book, and I'm using this Tolkien writing as a border around my book cover. I just needed a little bit of contrast between the black instruction paper and the cover of the book, so I'm just layering that to give it a little bit more visual interest. And I'm excited to fill in some quotes and really detail the story, the third story in this trilogy, when I write in my book reviews. Now it's time to set up my December spreads. These are some stunning stickers that I just fell in love with by Marigona Suli. This is her Winter Magic Cozy Winter and Winter Reading sticker sheets, and they are just so adorable. So I had to get all three. But for content, we need to include some of my Lightfall pages. So Lightfall is a mini readathon, part of the magical readathon world, where we just have some fun winter activities and reading. So this year it looks like a bingo board challenge. The outermost square is different activities you can do during the week of Lightfall, and then the center 9 squares or 8 squares are reading challenges. Then, depending on if you get a bingo, you can choose from Dovanthia's flower arrangements. And these are just little baked goods and sweets that you could get to redeem your bingos. So I thought The color scheme here was very fitting, but this is a little too high contrast. So I'm going to make a Dutch door and put this behind it. So it can still have some of the content as part of the main page, but it'll be a little bit shorter. So we'll cut this page shorter than the following page so it has its own little extra door. I also have some origami sheets that correspond with the color scheme here and some good old paper. And then I also noticed my bestie gave me a gift, and the wrapping is just so perfect for this spread. So I'm going to use that as the background, and I think that'll give a lot of visual interest. So let's put this together while I talk about the two books I read for Lightfall, which are My Husband's Wife by Alice Feeney and Rock, Paper, Scissors, also by Alice Feeney. Okay, so I started Lightfall with My Husband's Wife because I had an ARC copy and I needed to finish that up. So it was the perfect book since it fulfilled many of the prompts that I needed for the week. And this book started out with a bang. We get our main character, she's going out for a run, and she realizes, oh, dang, I forgot my keys. So she runs back to the house and is knocking on the door, and she is greeted by a woman she doesn't recognize in her own house. This woman claims to be her, and her husband comes to the door to sort things out and doesn't recognize her either. And so, right off the bat, we're faced with a mystery, and you don't know who to trust. Is the woman who went for a run the actual wife, and her husband and this other woman are playing a trick on her? Or is she going crazy? As the reader, you have no idea, because then you get hit with another mystery of a gal in the city who is promised a chance to learn her fate and when she's going to die. So you have a couple different storylines at the same time and lots of mysteries hitting you from all angles. You have no idea who to trust. And at the end of every chapter, you're like, wait, what just happened? Everything I thought I knew is a lie. So it was a wild ride. And the only reason I went with a 4-star was because it still had that little bit at the end where it's kind of like they're dumping all of the answers to the mystery on you in a couple paragraphs. And that's just not my favorite bit of a thriller, but I really did have a really great time in this book. So, that being said, I was excited to pick up Rock, Paper, Scissors, which is also by Alice Feeney. I had read a book by her last year called Daisy Darker and really enjoyed it. While I guess the ending of that one, I still had a great time. So we're going for 3 for 3, except for Rock, Paper, Scissors, in my opinion, was so terrible. It's about a husband and wife who go out for like a cozy getaway. The wife wins a little weekend vacation with her husband. So they go out to the middle of nowhere, there's no service, it's an isolated setting, and then you find out that they are having some marriage problems. So, in addition to some bickering, you've also got power outages and creepy sounds, and these two are not conditioned to work things out together because there's some strife going on that no one is currently talking about. And that is where my issues began. I think I just really don't like stories where the husband and wife are constantly fighting and bickering, especially if they are the main characters. Like, if you're following one of the two and the other is just kind of like a side character, fine. But when you're getting a dual POV and both POVs are unlikable, it's hard for me to get on board with the characters and really follow the story. I do think that the ending of this one was quite cheap, with a surprise person with a motive. I don't like when thrillers surprise you at the end with someone brand new. And so this one just overall wasn't for me. But I do think y'all should read My Husband's Wife because that one had a wild, twisty-turny storyline. Okay, now that I've got my pages set up, I'm feeling pretty good about them. There's still a lot of blank space, so I'm going to use a couple more of these stickers to fill in those white areas and just make it look super Christmassy all throughout. So while I'm placing a couple more stickers, take a moment and leave me a comment. I want to know what your favorite part has been about this holiday season. Is it time with friends? Are you proud of something you made? Did you bake the most awesome pie ever? I want to know how you've been spending your winter months because I feel like in California it's already changing again and I am missing winter and I want to live in it as long as possible. Our family personally went through a lot of transition in this holiday season, so we've really thrived on just spending a lot of quality time together, and I hope that that can continue in the future years because we really prioritized it in 2025. All right, to mark my bingo sheet, I'm going to use a gold Jelly Roll pen. But this year was fun because in bingo we could combine a few different books for the different prompts. So I was able to fulfill my prompts with these two books. And then the outer circle, I did quite a few of those too. So let's see if I get a bingo. So for a blue cover with a 4-star rating that fell between 300 and 400 pages and was a standalone and a new release, My Husband's Wife fit the bill. And then for winter setting, white and cozy, I used the book Rock, Paper, Scissors. It definitely wasn't a cozy read. However, it was a cozy theme. A couple goes away for a cozy like getaway, and then it just ended up not being cozy. Okay, this pen doesn't work very well on this paper, so we're going to use rose gold instead. I'm going to add some stars in here just to make it a little bit more festive and stand out that I completed the books. So we got the 9 squares in the middle complete, and then I just need to fill in the ones that I finished on the outside. And I'll use this red marker for that. We definitely baked during that week. We were baking most of the nights in December for whatever party was happening. Definitely red when dark, because I do that every night. We donated to charity. I don't think we played a game. We were going to have a game night and then we ended up just getting busy and watching a movie. I suggested a book to my book club. Did not do the Lightful ASMR. Did light a candle because again, every night we pretty much light a candle. Although I've been using more and more battery operated ones and mine are on a timer, which makes the ambiance just so perfect because I don't even have to turn anything on. We did check in on friends. I did not DIY a card this week. I did make some like name cards for gifts, but that was later on in the month. Finished a craft. I was crafting all sorts of things as Christmas gifts and journaling and all that good stuff. We made my father-in-law a pizza passport full of a bunch of different like pizza places locally that he could try out and rate, and I made him like a little journal that he could peruse and pick a new pizza spot. Share my read. Actually, I read, because My Husband's Wife was an ARC, I had to turn in my review for that. So I did post a review on Goodreads. Sweet treat, you know me, for December, it's like hot chocolate every night. We definitely watched a movie, took a stroll. I was kind of prepping for my Walk to Mordor challenge. We did lots of walking. Window shopping, I don't think I did much of, not in person anyway. I probably window shopped some online shops. Hot drink, absolutely. Love a hot drink. And yeah, I think that is pretty much it. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 3 bingos. That's pretty good. So of all the bingos, oh wait, no, we can go across too. So we got 3, 4. Okay, 4 bingos. So I get to choose now 4 treats from Dovanthia's flower arrangements. So, ooh, which goodies do I want? I feel like I gotta go with Dovanthia's special because that is, the name of it's the name of the shop. It's the premium bakery good. Definitely going with a crescent moon croissant. I love a croissant. Simply the zest sounds delicious. I'm a really big fan of citrusy type things. And I think I want a Slippy cup because that sounds fun. So those are my 4 fun treats of Lightfall. I love how every year she just makes it a little bit different and more fun and engaging. And even though I'm allergic to gluten and can't have any of this, I'm excited that I can have it in my fantasy world. So, another fun project I did in December was to make an Advent reading book. And I chose That's a Great Question I'd Love to Tell You by Elise Myers. She is a TikTok, Instagram blogger, comedian, and she's hilarious. And she came out with her first biographical book. And I thought this is gonna be perfect because there's 23 chapters. So I'll make like a little Advent reading book and read a chapter a day. And then finish the year with some nonfiction, some good storytelling. I went to her actual signing of her book release. So I have a signed copy and I brought my husband with me. We were just laughing the whole time. But her book is so cute. It has lots of doodles in it, including like, this is the table of contents. It has all the chapters. So that inspired my little doodle for the Advent cover. So I just used this to cover the book as I was reading it. And in theory, this was such a fun idea, but in execution, it kind of failed because I was so obsessed with this book that I devoured it in like 2 days. So it wasn't really an Advent experience for me, but it was one of my favorite books that I read in December. So can't complain. But I thought, since I've made this anyway, let's repurpose this as part of the journaling backdrop. So be right back as I cut out all of these little picture frames and then we'll create a little collage of all of these for my book. So if you don't already know and love Elise Myers, she got famous on TikTok for her stories and sharing these little awkward moments of her life. And oftentimes she would start her reel with, "That's a great question I would love to tell you," and proceed with her story. So the title of her book is very fitting because this book is full of these stories of her life, her own coming of age story, if you will, of how she grew up and found her own voice and navigated friendships from elementary school into college, learning how to trust and fall in love, which friendships worked, people who were influential in her life. And it's just a very funny and beautiful story. Like I said, I went to her signing in person and she had her brother up on stage as a interviewer, and she was so proud because her brother read her book, and she's like, "Did you want to ask me anything about it?" And his question for her was like, "Yeah, I didn't understand this one chapter." And her response is like, "Oh, well, that's because it's from the perspective of a shirt." And that's how we started the evening, and everyone was roaring in laughter because only Elise's brain could take a story and tell it through the perspective of an old flannel shirt. And it was just, the whole book is adorable. and extremely relatable. I feel like she takes the awkward bits that we all feel and puts them into words to make you feel very seen. So I absolutely loved this, and if you are looking for any kind of nonfiction book this year, highly recommend picking this one up. And maybe try it in an immersive read situation like I did, where you are listening to the audiobook, which the author herself narrates, but you're also experiencing the book through its doodled poetic form, because it's very important that you understand the role Lucy, the magic 8-ball, plays in her overall story. It was fantastic. One of my favorite books of the month and of the year is The Other Side of Now by Paige Harbison. And for this spread, I've found some more Marigona Sully girls, and they're going to pull together the spreads for the next 3 books. I also found some coordinating washi tape from all different places to match the book covers that I have set aside for these spreads. The Other Side of Now really threw me for a loop. I was not expecting to love this book as much as I did. It ended up being one of my favorite books of the year, and when I picked it up, I thought it was just another cheesy romance, but I was so wrong. This book is a magical realism story about a gal who leaves her life in LA to pick a new life up in Ireland, and it's a unique circumstance where the people in Ireland know her, other dimension her, but she doesn't know any of them. So there's a second chance romance where she's re-falling in love with the person who loves her, and getting to know him for the first time, even though he already knows her. She's re-meeting her best friend and also just seeing her parents in a new light. It's so sweet. And again, one of my favorite reads of the year. So if you're looking for something a little bit lighter, but also something that's going to pull at your heartstrings, that has a little bit of a mystery to it, this one is fantastic. And it was perfect for a book club read. We had so much to talk about. My other book club book this month was The Briar Club by Kate Quinn. I have read several books by Kate, and she continues to amaze me with her amazing ability to write historical fiction. And it was refreshing to read something that took place in the 60s as opposed to World War style books that I've read from her before. It wasn't my favorite of her books, though. While I really did love the characters and the disability representation, I thought that there was this overarching message that, it's okay to do bad things as long as you're doing them with good intentions. And I don't really agree with that message, but I feel like every character in this book in some way was honoring that perspective. So it ended up just being kind of whatever for me. Another book I read was My Body Is Not a Prayer Request. And this book stood out to me because my brother is disabled, and I have seen this type of behavior in a church setting before, where he's used as an example or told, he doesn't have enough faith, or, he did something sinful to cause his disability. And I think that this is something that the church as a whole needs to really understand, that this behavior is toxic and not correct and not godly. So it was good to read from the perspective of someone pointing out these injustices in the church. My only gripe with this book was that it did still feel like there was a lot of anger that was unresolved, and that really came through in the author's voice of the book. I wish that there was a little bit more forgiveness in the learning curve of things. But other than that, I thought she brought up a lot of good points, and I think it will be good to carry into some conversations with my community at church. Meanwhile, I am loving how this spread is turning out. I really appreciate the color scheme. I specifically chose the Briar Club and My Body's Not a Prayer Request for their yellow colors, how they complemented the yellow in the other side of Now, and then pulling in the teal and sea foam to complement it. And I feel like the characters had a little bit of that color palette as well. So everything is feeling very cohesive. And I love that Marigona's sticker sheets have these tiny little flowers that you can use as added embellishments in those little blank areas. The next book I read was The Merge by Grace Walker. This was a wild card for me, and I definitely chose it for the cover because the cover is stunning. But I was looking on NetGalley, and this book really caught my attention. So, for the decoration of this journal page, I'm going to use some iridescent watercolor and try to mimic this sloppy paint brushstroke texture of the cover while I talk to you about the plot of this crazy book. So, The Merge is a speculative fiction novel in which we are in a dystopian era London, and folks are given the opportunity to merge consciousness with another person. So, basically, you have two people, one body, and your brains and consciousness are combined. So, you're living as two people in one body. And right now, it's not required by the government, but it is encouraged. And people who undergo the merge are given really good housing and better jobs and just more opportunities than your everyday person. So, Amelia is our main character, and she really wants to merge because her mom has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And if they merge, they can save her mom's consciousness before the disease completely eats it away. The problem is they can't trust the government, and the longer they're in the program, the less and less they want to continue on with the experiment. Then, based on your recommendations, I read The Color Purple by Alice Walker. And for this, I'm going to use some Mochi Bucho sticker sheets for two characters representing Celie and Nettie, two sisters growing up in rural Georgia. This book was so sad, but also so good and truly unforgettable. It's told from the perspective of Celie, and she's the older of many siblings, but she is most close to her sister Nettie. They are separated as children, and the story kind of follows both of their lives as they grow up. First, through the perspective of Celie, who is, I would say, the main character of the novel, since the perspective is through her. But later, we also learn about Nettie and her experience growing up through a series of letters that were originally withheld from Celie. So, even though they are not together in person, they are still able to have a relationship through these letters. Celie's circumstances are much more dire than Nettie. Nettie is given more opportunities like an education and a job, and she joins the missionary group and ends up in Africa, whereas Celie lives her whole life in this small town, Georgia, living the way her parents lived. So it was really beautiful to see the differences and the similarities in the way they grow up, and then how they really shape each other through the letters back and forth and learning from each other's experiences, even though they're so different. It's also a really lovely story of redemption because it follows them through so many decades. So even though there are moments of really deep hurt, there's also moments of forgiveness and understanding as all of the characters are growing up and learning from mistakes and their upbringings. So a lot of the generational trauma is hopefully ended in their experiences and will get better in future generations. It was an amazing book. And if you haven't read it like me, I know it's been out for so long, but this is definitely one to put on a reading list somewhere. All right, guys, we have 2 more reviews left, starting with Not Quite Dead Yet by Holly Jackson. This story was so much fun. It is about our main character, Jet, who survives an attempted murder on her life. And while she doesn't have long to live, she has hopefully just enough time to solve her own murder. She does this with the help of her childhood best friend, Billy, and together they uncover lots of family secrets and some past hurts that had originally broken them up as children. There's a little bit of a love story and some familial distrust, and Holly Jackson just takes you for quite the wild ride. I will say, if you are listening to the audiobook, the narrator's voice for Billy is so cringe. It sounds like a boy going through puberty who has been smoking for 30 years. It is terrible. So go into it knowing that that is the situation. This is also Holly Jackson's first adult novel, and truly I feel like the only thing that made it feel adult was her use of swear words. So if you are sensitive to heavy language or sensitive to really cringy narration, then I would recommend possibly reading this one with your eyeballs so you can skip over those parts. But beyond that, it was a very fun mystery, and I am looking forward to discussing this with my book club in January. And my final review and my final read of 2025 is Queen of Shadows. This took me months to read because, again, I was reading it with my eyeballs and there was a lot going on at the end of the year of 2025. Let me just say that. I don't want to get into the plot so much because, again, this is right in the middle of the Throne of Glass series, and I'm sure most of you have already read this. I know I'm behind, but this book was so much fun. We got lots of time with my favorite character, Manon, and all the characters are really setting up for a triumphant ending. It ended with a lot of resolution, which is both fun but also a little concerning because I'm like, okay, where is the next book gonna go? And apparently I'm supposed to read the next 2 books at the same time in tandem with each other, so that's gonna be a wild experience. So yeah, that's where I'm at in this series. Let me know if you guys did the tandem read and if you advise it. I think I'm gonna do it. I feel like I have to, but I'm excited to keep going in this one. And for my final spread of my 2025 reading journal, we are ending it with my Sales and Tales readathon. This was something I put out in November as a December readathon, but really you can do it anytime. It's not specific to any month. So if you missed out on it the first time, feel free to join. There's free resources for you in the video description, but basically the way it works is there's a couple different reading challenges for you. So the first one is sort of a choose your own adventure challenge where as you read throughout the month, you can mark off which of these prompts your books fit appropriately. And then at the end of the month, whichever column you have the most books read from is who your character is at the end. So this is one way you can play. You can also play a bingo version. And I made this so that everybody's bingo boards would be a little bit different. So the bingo board here is blank, and you can print out all of the prompts here, cut and paste them individually into these squares, and then you can see which prompts you get at the end. Finally, if you don't use a square journal, I did make an A5 size if you want to still play. Bingo definitely works better as a square size, but you could always shrink it down if you wanted to put it in your own journals. So let's cut these out and let's see how well I did in my own readathon. Since I am filming this in January, a lot of you have already messaged me with your results, and I think it's really interesting because most people are getting captain or mermaid, and I have yet to meet anyone who's gotten a pirate. So if you did get a pirate in this reading challenge. I would love to know. It definitely seems like Captain is the most popular. So I'm curious to know which I will get, which character. I am also going to be playing both boards. So we're setting up bingo on the right here, and I'm just prepping my board with some glue tape so I can just easily, place down the squares after I shuffle them. And we're just going to put them on here randomly so that they're all in a miscellaneous order and everybody's page who's playing is, a little bit different. So I am first starting with the squares that are complete and don't have any illustrations on them, and then I'll go back and cut around some of those waves because I do like that detail. I have loved so much seeing your setups for this, and it just makes my heart so happy that you guys would want to participate in a readathon with me. So thanks again to everyone who wanted to play along and helping me close out my pirate reading journal year. Okay, and to mark off the ones that we got, I have these little star stickers. So let's see what we did. So the first book I read this month was The Briar Club, which would count for gold foil on the cover and read from a genre you're loyal to. This was a historical fiction book, so I read a lot of that. And let's fill the same thing in on this page. So we have gold and anthem. The second book I read was The Color Purple, which counts for port since it was a recent purchase. Then I read The Merge, which was an arc, and that counts for hat, a book with a pretty cover. It counts for Hook, an impulse buy. I didn't technically buy it, but I very impulsively requested that on NetGalley because I thought it looked super interesting. And it's definitely outside of my comfort zone, so I would consider that an impulse buy for sure. And because it's a newer genre, it'll count for Drunken Dance. Then I read The Other Side of Now, but that does not fit any of the prompts. My Husband's Wife by Alice Feeney counts for The Pirate, containing a morally gray character. It also counts for Sun and Stars, as it has some stars on the cover. My Body is Not a Prayer Request did not apply to any of the prompts, so we'll skip that one. Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney did count for a couple. So first we've got an isolated setting, so that counts for Island. It's also a book that has a black and white cover, which counts for Black Sails. And it would also count for a book with a white cover. So it counts for Pearl. Then we have That's a Great Question I Would Love to Tell You. This book would also count for Port since that's another recent purchase that I made. It counts for Grotto since I have a special edition since I got it signed by the author. My Husband's Wife counts for Waves as that has water on the cover. Not Quite Dead Yet contains the colors of my country's flag. Since I'm an American, my flag's colors are red, white, and blue, and that cover is red, white, and blue. And then we have Queen of Shadows, which counts for map since it contains a map of the fantasy world. It counts for captain since you definitely have a study in leadership in that book. Counts for hurricane as I am continuing a series that I'm very much swept into. Counts for siren song because it is many people's 5 stars. And it also counts for mermaids since there are fae and other creatures in this series. So I got the majority of the squares, but let's see overall how well I did. And let's double check the ones that I didn't sign off. We've got Compass, which is a book with north, south, east, west in the title. I did not complete this prompt. I also didn't read any books that had a metal word in the title, like iron or silver. For wind, the title needed to contain a word with sound, so like voice or echo, something like that, song. Gems, I did not have any gemstones on the cover or in the title. and I did not read any of the final books in a series. So those were the 4 that I did not complete, but let's see overall which one did the best out of everything. For the captain, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 out of 8. So that's pretty good results. For the pirate, I only have 6 out of 8. And for mermaid, I only have 6 out of 8. So the captain is my winning result. And for bingos, let's see how many I got. We've got 1 across here, 1 across here. This middle row, I did not do very well at all. And then we didn't finish these 2 bottom rows. And I only got 1 up and down. So 3 bingos overall. I would say that's pretty good results. And I am pleased with this game and how it all turned out. I hope you guys also had so much fun playing. And again, if you missed out on this readathon and still want to participate, please do. I had a lot of fun with this, and I'm having a lot of fun watching you guys participate and hearing your results and experiences. That was a really long video, everyone. Thank you so much for a fantastic year. Again, you guys inspire me daily to continue with this project, and I'm excited to bring you many more book spreads in 2026. For now, I hope you guys have an amazing start to your year. Let's get into the final flip of November and December, and stay tuned for a video coming soon with an entire flip through of my reading journals. Have an amazing day. Bye.